Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years.
So Melissa, last night I went to go talk to my 14-year-old son just about school, right?
Distance learning and all.
About distance learning, which is new to everyone. Mm-hmm. And he started doing his distance learning, like laying down in his bed with his lights off, right?
That seems productive.
Well, right. And he's supposed to be on video calls and, you know, being a master professional of Zoom calls, I was like, you shouldn't do your calls from your bed, right? I just felt as a parent and the teacher of our house, I guess, that's not like where he should do his calls, right?
Yeah.
Not a big deal. I just wanted to say, hey, let's just sit at your desk and he responded to that thought with, I don't know why you're always on me. You need to stay in your lane.
You need to stay in your lane.
You need to stay in your lane. And I flippin' lost it.
It came off the top ropes.
Oh my God. Like, I can usually stay pretty calm on stuff, but you know how like teenagers can just push the right exact little thing. And
in no time flat.
And that was it. And so I grabbed his computer, his phone, and his iPad, which are his like most valuable possessions, and like went down in the kitchen. And it's like I was shaking, right? I could just feel that like adrenaline response. I could just feel those feelings just like surging through me, right? At that point, I was just like, I don't care about the bed thing. Now we are just...
We're all in.
Yeah.
We are all in, you and me, son.
Yeah. I will show you what the lane is. Right? So, this is my lane. The whole thing is my lane.
I'm actually the entire freeway.
Right? And I'm getting in my bulldozer, and I'm just gonna plow everything down. So I think, I calmed it down after that, but boy, it really spun me around for a second.
I think it's interesting, like just talking about this, like how many times do you go into some situation, whether it's at home or if it's at work or whatever, and you have sort of an agenda in your mind about what's going to happen. Like, here are the following bullet points I'm going to communicate. This is how the situation's going to go. This is how everybody else is going to respond to my bullet points. Like, we kind of go in with some agenda, like a thinking pattern.
Yeah.
And then someone interacts with us and feelings all of a sudden are present and totally change our capacity to have the message, or they just spin us in a totally different direction and we may not even remember what we were thinking before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like that's a pretty extreme example, right?
Yeah.
But we all come, in conversations a lot where I think we're going to talk about one thing and then that subject changes and I feel a little off kilter. Like I have to finish my one thought before I can move somehow to another topic.
Yeah. And sometimes for me, like even in my coaching sessions, like I'll have an idea of a topic that really should probably be discussed. So I'll have sort of some thinking around, how to broach the topic so that it's objective and that people can enter into the discussion. And oftentimes then the feelings of the topic will just derail objectivity for the individual and they get these amped up emotions right away. And It could be not, it doesn't even have to be a bad thing or a good thing. It just could be a topic that they have some energy around. Mm-hmm. And boy, you really have to notice that, how that affects you too, because you're exactly right. Like for me, if I notice somebody is really having a hard time, or they're getting triggered, like you and I use that word a lot.
Yep.
They're getting triggered by something and they're having a really strong emotional response. I have to make a conscious decision to stay neutral.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't aware, it would be very easy to get swept up in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if you're in a position where you're actually trying to make like a reasoned, logical choice.
Yeah. Yep.
Those emotions are just like messing with your thinking, right? With your reasoning, right? Because you're not really being maybe driven by that part of your brain anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You're being driven by the emotions.
It's interesting to think about this topic, particularly today, because there's a lot going on in the world. You know, on the day that we're filming this today, we are, about a month out from the presidential election. People are really amped up about that. There's a lot of unrest in the streets. Yep. There's still this whole stuff with the pandemic, going back to school. It's starting to get cold out, so we can't be outside. So I think that even when we're trying our very best to keep thinking about the jobs that we have, thinking about our things that we're supposed to be thinking about and keeping on the rails, I think that there is this sort of feeling that rolls around inside of us and makes us feel just filled with unease.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people notice that, like in the moment when they're trying to work, versus how long does it take someone to notice if it's like creeps up for a while.
Yes, I really like that idea because, again, the trigger moments, those are flash points. Like they're pretty easy to recognize in yourself.
Yeah.
The ones that I think the more subtle feeling stuff, like you're saying, is like an example is, like you're saying, everybody right now maybe has an uneasy feeling, right? Mm-hmm. Which means at work, and I've seen this in our team, they'll be more conservative around decisions, right? They'll be a little bit more anxious to make this. Is this the right decision? Are we going to be okay if I make this decision? Is this whole thing going to fall apart? When really the fact is that that thought patterns coming from their general uneasy feeling, it has very little to do with like their job, that decision, and the
in the
business.
In the moment, right.
But it's like an undercurrent, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's shaping thinking. So, for me, if I want the team to make some, maybe more like aggressive or risky decisions, I really have to make sure that I'm reminding them that we're making decisions that's affecting like a business. Everything's going to be okay. It's safe to make riskier decisions, because we know it's part of a bigger plan. But their default is more conservative right now. Yeah.
And I think really, as we're always talking about self-awareness and how it can really make improvements in our way of being, particularly in this topic. And we've kind of talked a little bit about this in some other podcasts and some of the other video lessons that we've done, but I think it really bears repeating over and over again, is that being able to understand how your body is responding and how you're feeling to things. Because a lot of times, like I was in a coaching session yesterday and someone said, I just don't feel very good. Like I can't pinpoint what it is. That's what they said. I can't pinpoint what it is. I just don't feel good. And for 2 days, I've been wandering around like, what is this? Why am I like this? What am I thinking? And it's impacting absolutely everything. Yeah. So I think having the awareness of, first of all, recognizing when we do have some unease, like recognizing it. And I think it would be doing ourselves a disservice to make ourselves wrong for recognizing that we're feeling like that. A lot of times we have these feelings and we want to shove them away, and I think it's just, there's a component here again where it's like, oh, I'm feeling so uneasy. And it's affecting absolutely all of my decisions that I'm making right now.
Yep. And we were talking about this the other day, is especially now, that uneasiness is turning into fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been happening so long, we're all just getting tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Emotionally tired. And that's having an effect on our thinking too.
Yeah. I think, for me, what I would really want to be kind of focusing on in this topic, I think something that's really important for us is, so we're talking about how to identify it in our bodies. Like we feel it, like we feel uneasy. Like I always get a stomach ache, or I can tell I'm not sleeping well and I get a headache, or I feel tight across the shoulders. Like I have certain key things that are absolute body triggers for me that say you're in a state of not feeling easy. And rather than a lot of judgment around that or trying to pretend like it's not true, I think it's much more beneficial to recognize, trace that feeling back. Like, where is it coming from? Mm-hmm. And once I'm figuring out where it's coming from, it's not realistic to try to push it away or to force feed myself a whole load of positive pills. Mm-hmm. But to just focus on the things that I know can make me feel better. Because the vibration and the energy that I kick things off with, people are noticing that in all of us.
Yep.
Whatever we lead with from our feeling perspective is absolutely in front of anything that we say or any of the way we're interacting with people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really true. So like, what things do you do to make yourself feel better?
Yeah.
Like how do you change that energy for yourself?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I learned a long time ago is what doesn't work is to try to force myself into having a positive attitude. So the minute I go, oh, I just don't feel good, what does not work for me, or really I don't think it works at all, is to just go, oh, okay, now that I notice it, I'm just going to, it's fine. Yeah. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, I'm upset now, but so I'm going to just decide to be not upset.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to go run and do something else. So for me, I think just acknowledging, first of all, I don't really feel that great. And then acknowledging how it's impacting the thoughts that I have, the interactions that I have. And as the moment that I can label it, then I get my energy away from it. In other words, I don't want to focus on that yucky feeling. I don't want to focus on it. Once I've identified that that's what's happening for me, I very much move quickly into more general and more positive thinking patterns. And not expecting myself to respond 100% in 5 seconds, but just start, for example, let me just give a real life example. So if I'm feeling anxious, so we're in the middle of a huge remodel project in our house. And there's a lot of opportunity where there could be anxiety around that. Okay. Yep. And so if I all of a sudden notice that I'm having anxiety, the first thing that I can say to myself is, okay, I'm feeling really uneasy. What is this about? What is the subject of my thoughts that got me to feeling this way? Oh, it's the remodel project. Okay. And then I'll notice that I was sort of fixating on certain parts of that project. What if there's water damage in an outside wall because we have stucco? What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And that subject of the remodel, I'm focusing on the negative side of that remodel. So I can simply bring myself back and go more general in the same subject. For example, this remodeling project is going to be so beautiful when it's done. I'm so looking forward to this room being light and airy, and I'm so excited that we're doing something to the house because it's been 15 years since the last time we did a project. And while there's some stuff going on, it's just so interesting and fun to see all of the progress every day. So I'm using the exact same point of contention in my heart, but I'm turning it a little bit so that I can start going more general and more on a positive note.
Yeah, that's a really great example. I thought you were going to say chocolate.
That's always my example. I worry that people are tired of me saying that. Snacks and chocolate. But I think
those things like snacks and chocolate, while make you temporarily feel good, what you're talking about is much deeper than chocolate. I mean, I know that's a horrible thing to say.
Yeah,
deeper
yes.
than chocolate, but
Well, I don't know if that's actually true, but for the sake of this podcast, I'll let it go. But I think really that the key to all of this is us being able to get to spending enough time understanding what has us got in our triggered spot,
Yep.
but only staying there long enough to identify what it is.
yeah.
Because instead of ruminating on it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting when, you're using this example of your house remodel and the anxiety around it. I think it's interesting to think about, why do we have feelings in the first place? Right? We have these things, right? Or it's like, if you move it back, like feelings must exist for a reason, right? Like a survival reason, right? They're part of humans. Why, if they were unnecessary, they wouldn't be part of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So why do they even exist in the first place? And so I was reading a book about evolutionary biology, right?
That sounds light-hearted.
As you do. I mean, it's, it was that or Harry Potter. And so one of the things they were talking about in this book is that feelings and emotional responses are part of survival and procreation, basically. They're two fundamental things to, like, if you want to get humans to continue on, you got to make sure they stay alive.
Right.
And they procreate, right? And so a lot of emotional responses, the theory in the book was that a lot of our emotions are fundamentally designed to solve for those two things.
Yeah. Right.
So for your example, like, you want a safe house, a safe, secure, structurally sound house, right?
Yes.
And you don't want any water damage or structural problems. And these are like fundamental, like almost survival things. Like,
yeah.
My cave must be secure. But in today's society, some of those, and today's environment, I'd say, some of those like really fundamental survival things just aren't very relevant, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
it's sort of like that fight or flight mentality too,
yes.
as you've talked about. Like, it feels like you're sort of dancing a little around some of that too.
Yeah, that would be fight or flight. That's like one of those basic instinct things that try to keep you alive, right? In dangerous situations. And the fact is, while uncomfortable, a dangerous situation isn't, I wasn't heard in a meeting. Right?
Yeah, it's not as relevant.
I must fight, right? Or whatever. Or even like my kid's doing his homework in his bed. And now, like, the emotional response of that doesn't need to be fight or flight. Yeah. It can be much easier than that. But we have, but that's what we have. That's what we have to work with,
like,
right?
deep instincts that are like right in our DNA is what you're saying. Like, a deep instinct to have certain feelings is in our DNA and has been since the beginning of the human race. Yep.
Like, I can't tell you, like, I'm not a real big fan of snakes.
No, I'm not either.
And I cannot tell you how many times I've like seen a rope on the ground and jumped as if it was a snake, right? Like, I don't come across snakes. Like, this isn't a part of my daily life. And like, we live in Minnesota, and I don't even know that there's a deadly snake that is like natural. I mean, like, the worst we would see would be like a tiny garden snake, and
those gardeners can be really big. Those things can be like the size of very large ropes.
Right. Yeah, very large string. But that's one of those things, right? The primal fear of a snake and me jumping to not get bit by it is not a relevant skill for me to have in my environment.
Wow.
Right? But it's there. It's there, and it happens. Like, so obviously we have no ropes at our house.
Well, and I know this is slightly off topic, but I always say, if God would have just put ears or something on them, they'd be cuter.
But there we have. I've got this emotional reaction to snakes, and I almost never see a snake. And like, maybe like 1,000 times, one time out of 1,000 times I think I see a snake, it's actually a snake. Right? Right. So from a biology perspective, like, it doesn't make any sense.
So let me just like summarize. So are you saying that you think a lot of the things that we see or our instant reactions to things are not based on reality at all?
Yes.
But okay.
That's a way smarter way to say it than what I was trying to explain.
No, but I think that's interesting though. So you're right, because what you're talking about is how we are very logical beings, and we're always talking in the self-awareness journey about, we use our brains so much that our feelings don't have much of a chance to intersect.
Yeah.
When our brains are in full power. I always say brains are a great tool and a horrible master. And in this case, what you're saying is, what the brain does is, a minute that it has something that triggers a feeling, when the brain sees something or gets triggered by something, it's instantly looking to put it into a file folder that it recognizes. And so, and it can elicit really strong emotions or feelings, like, boom, in the moment.
Yeah. Right. So in my examples, it's like, I'm not seeing clearly. I'm seeing an illusion, right? Like the snake, like the rope, I think is a snake.
Yeah.
I saw a snake, my brain says, you just saw a snake, jump and run away. Well, that's an illusion. That's not reality, because the reality is it's a rope and it's not moving.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing, I believe we actually encounter all the time.
Yeah.
We respond to a thing that's not reality.
Yes.
Now, when you get into philosophy, you start talking about how that is an illusion, or you have a delusional mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. You're making up stories.
You're making up stories. Mm-hmm. And it happens with things that are maybe very physical, like the snake example. It happens in social context all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Because again, part of our, millions of years ago, part of human survival tuning was also living in tribes, and you had to rely on other people. That's like how we got here, right?
Right, exactly.
So the social dynamics are a part of that emotional reaction too. And you're going to have illusion in those scenarios too, because there was emotional responses to keep you in a survival state then too.
And you know what? You see that in the workplace all the time, JJ. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm totally tracking with you, because I think that, like, in situations where there's interactions going on or decisions having to be made or teams working together, it is very common for someone to get triggered by something that they think someone is doing to them, or that person's acting like this because of, this is what happens to me every time. And it's the exact same thing. They start experiencing something that isn't actually occurring because maybe once before they did, or they're looking for substantiating evidence to a belief that they have that isn't right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is just this idea of how our feelings interact with our thoughts, just in everyday common things. I'm always beating the drum of, like, just, that self-awareness, that conscious knowledge of how you are in the moment. Having more of that really allows a lot more objectivity, and I think it gives us a chance to not have to emotionally dive head first into a shallow cement pool because we have an instant reaction about something, because we're in sort of a state that's not actually true.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's good practice for everybody to really stay in the moment, like really when those things happen, just take that second to reflect, right? We say like get a gap in there. Between
just ask the question.
And,
isn't that interesting? Like you have a really strong feeling or a reaction to something, then rather than going all in, if you can, sit back and just like you said, create a gap. And the way I offer that in coaching is to say, ask yourself, well, isn't that interesting? Like I just had a really strong emotion. Isn't that interesting? Because it just gives a little space. Yeah. And with a little space, then we can start recognizing what is the subject of my thoughts that have got me so wound up right now. And can I reframe them gently and in a smaller way to start feeling better? Because again, every time we feel bad and try and push something out, it doesn't work nearly as well. We have to feel good to make good things happen. It's just the way that it is.
Yep. Well, I'm going to practice that. And in the meantime, I'm going to go round up all the ropes in my house and hide them.
You can come to my house anytime if you want to see some garter snakes, because we got snakes. And you will hear me from across Minneapolis every single time. If you've enjoyed this podcast, check us out on the web at theselfawarenessjourney.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Facebook.